beside my door, whispering to the sunlit shore.
So good afternoon. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here. Today will be an interesting day. My name is Susan Karp, for those that you don't know, and I am the Executive Director of the Arlington Council on Aging. I'm really just the face of the organization. The Council on Aging has an incredibly talented staff that each and every day comes to work with meaning and purpose to provide as many resources for the Arlington seniors to live a dignified life in Arlington. Today was designed with meaning and purpose. Today, we're going to talk about how to say no. Today, we're going to try to reduce the fear of what financial abuse is and how it impacts our life. And today, we're going to empower you through knowledge and action. Whether you came today to just hear Will and Joe, or the lunch prepared by Neilio's, or the ice cream provided by Abby Lynn's, I can commit today that you will not be disappointed. You will not leave just with full bellies, but with information to take home, to share in your homes, as well as your friends and neighbors. Trust me, Middlesex DA Marion Ryan will not disappoint. For now, it's time to let Will and Joe start the event off this afternoon. In front of you, you have programs that give you a guide on what will happen today. So they're going to be starting for the first 10 minutes. Then we'll have you go ahead and get your lunches in the back. Will and Joe will continue to play, so they know that there's going to be movement in the audience. So welcome, Will and Joe. Will?
Thank you. We are honored to be here in this glorious room. We're going to share with you a bunch of Hoagie Carmichael songs. Here's one perfect for today. Sorry about that. Is that better? All right. I like lazy weather. I like lazy days. I can't be blamed for having lazy ways. Some old lazy river sleeps beside my door, whispering to the sunlit shore. Up a lazy river by the old mill run, that lazy, lazy river in the noonday sun. Linger in the shade of a kind old tree. Throw away your troubles, dream a dream with me. Up a lazy river where the robin's song awakes a bright new morning, we can roll along. Blue skies up above, everyone's in love. Up a lazy river, how happy we will be. Up a lazy river with me. Joe, take a solo. Up a lazy river where that robin song awakes a bright new morning, we can loaf along. Blue skies up above, everyone's in love. Up a lazy river, how happy we will be. me up a lazy river with me. I can't believe we've got the police and fire department here too. This is a very special event. This is a very special day. Well, dear Howard Hoagland Carmichael, he's an Indiana guy, Bloomington, Indiana, and according to family legend, he started fooling around on the piano when he was just a child, picking out the melody, exactly, played by the Indiana University clock tower bells. And I bet, like me, one of the first Hoagie Carmichael songs you learned is this one that we like to play when we were in elementary school, when we could fool around on the piano. Give us a little piece of that. And as I think some of you know, from over in the lovely building up there, I welcome humming along, or tapping along, or singing along. Heart and soul, I fell in love with you. Heart and soul, the way a fool would do, madly, because you held me tight and stole a kiss in the night. Heart and soul, I begged to be adored, lost control and tumbled overboard. We kissed there in the moon mist. Oh, but your lips were thrilling, much too thrilling. Never before were mine so strangely willing, and now I see what one embrace can do. Look at me, it's got me loving you madly. That little kiss we stole held all my heart. And give us that little riff one more time. So Susan, are you ready? That was 10 minutes. A couple of songs, a couple of lazy summer songs. Please. You want here. Well, but you're going to be speaking now for 10 minutes. You ready? Come on up. Yeah.
Actually, what I'm going to do, because now we're standing in the way between you and the food. So how we're doing it is that both these gentlemen here know the routine. So we expect you to be able to have chatter and have their music in the background. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just as orderly as you possibly can. Meet our volunteers in the back, and you have choices today. You have choices every day, actually, but for lunch today, you have a choice between ham, turkey, or tomato cheese, provided by Neilio's of Lexington. So at this point in time, if you'll just go ahead and get up and go get your food, come back to the table, and Will and Joe will continue to play until the other program starts at 10 of 1.
I don't want to have it feed back. Bread and yum, 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 yum. I'll give you this magic tool back.
Check.
It's the old pot on stage. Let's have a little bread and gravy. Here's a song that I wasn't familiar with. It was made famous by Ethel Waters, and this is kind of perfect for a luncheon. Bread and gravy, lots of bread and gravy. Beans and bacon, lots of beans and bacon. No more fretting,
since I'm getting lots of bread and gravy all the time. Peace and quiet, lots of peace and quiet. Friends and money, lots of friends and money. No more rambling through with scrambling. Keep up with the Joneses all the time. I got no reason to be swell, yet my clothes all fit me well, and I wear a nice ring. I'm as free as I can be, and my honey's loving me, so I just can't keep from singing. Bread and gravy, lots of bread and gravy. Good night kisses. I never love, my love never misses. No more bad news, no more blues now. Just lots of bread and gravy all the time. Tomato, cheese, turkey and ham. Tomato, cheese, turkey or ham. Let's give him a little mayonnaise. Got no reason to be swell, and my clothes all fit me well, love it. And I'll wear a nice ring. I'm as free as I can be, and my honey's loving me, so I just can't keep from singing. We got bread and gravy, lots of bread and gravy. Good night kisses, my love never misses. No bad news now, no more blues now. Just lots of bread and gravy all the time. Yes, lots of bread and gravy all the time. When Hoagie was young, he got so excited by what was then called hot jazz. So here's a couple of songs that he wrote later on that kind of fit in with the idea of hot jazz. The Give Me, Jubilee, and the one before it, Give Me a Swing Song. They segue together. They segue together. Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Do that 2 more times. Yeah. Oh, baby, I don't want you to croon soft and mellow. Let me warn you in advance. Sing me a swing song and let me dance. Oh, baby, I don't want any moon, soft and yellow. You can have your sweet romance. Sing me a swing song and let me dance. Mr. Trombone, play some chord. I ain't caring what notes. Mr. Trumpet, grab a horn. Brother, give me hot notes. Oh, baby, I don't want any tune on the cello. Give the rhythm man a chance. Sing me a swing song and let me dance. A jubilee, come and join the jubilee. Gather on the run, have a lot of fun, singing in the sun. A jubilee, come and Jubilee. Jubilee, a nice song for a Thursday lunch party. Well, one of Hoagie's most beloved songs was actually written in Astoria, Queens. He spent time, he grew up out in Indiana. He went to Indiana University, he became a lawyer. He practiced law down in Florida. But then he was lured back up to New York City, which was kind of the songwriting capital of the United States at that point. And he and one of his college roommates had a cheap place in Astoria, and that's where they wrote the music and the words for this next lovely song. Yeah. It's got a sweet verse that not everyone sings. Melodies bring memories that linger in my heart, make me think of Georgia. Why did we ever part? Some sweet day when blossoms fall like today, and all the world's a song. I'll go back to Georgia, 'cause that's where I belong. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pine. Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly, still in sleepless dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my and then what? Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly, still in sleepless dreams I see the road I find just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Ooh, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Joe Mulholland, very happy at this piano. It's a dream to sing in this space. Well, Hoagie Carmichael sometimes wrote the lyrics for his songs. Mostly he just did the music, and he teamed up with a bunch of different great lyricists. Here's a kind of silly song, which I think won the Academy Award nonetheless, that he wrote with Johnny Mercer. It's also kind of nice for a lazy late spring feast. One tick faster. Sue wants a barbecue, Sam wants to boil a ham, Grace votes for bouillabaisse stew. Jake wants a weenie baked steak and a layer cake. He'll get a tummy ache too. I voted for you. We've got a song. Oh, I've never met you. It's exciting. Let the town crier cry. And if it's RSVP, here's what I'll reply. In the cool, cool, cool of the evening, tell 'em I'll be there. In the cool, cool, cool of the evening, better save a chair when the party's getting a glow on and singing fills the air. In the shank of the night when the doing's alright, you can tell 'em I'll be there. We said the honeybee, let's have a jubilee. When said the prairie hen, soon. Sure, said the dinosaur. When said the grizzly bear, under the light of the moon. How about you, brother jackass? Everyone gaily cried. Are you going to the fracas? Over his specs he sighed. In the cool, cool, cool of the evening, tell 'em I'll be there. In the cool, cool, cool of the evening, slick 'em in my hair. When the party's getting a glow on and singing fills the air. If I can crawl out of bed, slap a hat on my head, you can tell 'em I'll be there. If there's room for one more and you need me, why sure, you can tell 'em I'll be there. If I'm still on my feet and there's something to eat, you can tell them I'll be there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening at all. This is the time to schmooze with your friends. Thank you for listening a little bit. Well, Hoagie's got a lot of songs that kind of fit well with summer. How about, jump back to the nearness of you. This is one I've always loved. Has lyrics by the same guy who wrote the lyrics for When You Wish Upon a Star, Ned Washington. It's not the pale moon that excites me, that it thrills and delights me. Oh no, it's just the nearness of you. It isn't your sweet conversation that brings this sensation. Oh no, it's just the nearness of you. When you're in my arms again, and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. I need no soft lights to enchant me, if you'll only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight, and to feel in the night the nearness of you. La 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 la. Do 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 do. Play Joe, play Joe, play Joe. When you're in my arms again, and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. I need no soft lights to enchant me, if you'll only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight, and to feel in the night the nearness of you. Thank you. How about another one with lyrics by Johnny Mercer? This one's about a bird. Skylar. There's in different biographies, they tell you different stories. Johnny would listen to the melody over and over and over again. This is most of the time before we had recording devices, so he'd have to get it into his brain. He'd take it away sometimes for a couple of days, sometimes for a couple of months. And apparently this was one that he gestated for a long time, but I think it was worth it. He came back to Hoagie with this lyric. Have you anything to say to me? won't you tell me where my love can be? Is there a meadow in the mist where someone's waiting to be kissed? Oh, skylark, have you seen a valley green with spring, where my heart can go a journeying over the shadows and the rain to a blossom-covered lane? And in your lonely flight, haven't you heard the music in the night? Wonderful music, faint as a will-o'-the-wisp, crazy as a loon, sad as a gypsy serenading the moon. Oh, skylark, there's been a breeze, Susan, there's been a breeze. I don't care what you can find these things, but my heart is riding on your wings. So if you see them anywhere, won't you lead me to another solo by Joe Mulholland? Oh yeah, get some air on this. And in your lonely flight, haven't you heard the music in the night? Wonderful music, faint as a will-o'-the-wisp, crazy as a loon, sad as a gypsy serenading the moon. Oh, skylark, I don't know if you can find these things, but my heart is riding on your wings. So if you see them anywhere, won't you lead me there? Johnny Mercer lyrics, we love them. We love that Johnny Mercer. How about How Little We Know, backing up a couple. How Little We Know. It's before the one about the park. Backing up. The other way, go the other way, backing up. We skipped it in our run. This is a song that Hoagie wrote for the movies. Yeah. We can do it as like a nice little Latin. A little Latin. Yeah. Maybe it happens this way. Maybe we only are meant together, but after all, how little we know. Maybe it's just for a day. Love is as changeable as the weather, but after all, how little we know. Who knows why an April breeze never remains? Why stars in the trees hide when it rains? Love comes along, casting a spell. Will it sing you a song? Will it say a farewell? Who can tell? Maybe you're meant to be mine. Maybe I'm only supposed to stay in your arms a while, as others have done. Is this what I've waited for? Am I the one? Oh, I hope in my heart that it's so, no matter how little we know. La 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 la. La 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 la. Ooh, la 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 la. La 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 la. Who knows why an April breeze never remains? Why stars in the trees hide when it rains? Love comes along, casting a spell. Will it sing you a song? Will it say a farewell? Who can tell? Maybe you're meant to be mine. Maybe I'm only supposed to stay in your arms a while, as others have done. Is this what I'm waiting for? Am I the one? Oh, I hope in my heart that it's so, in spite of how little we know. Yes, I hope in my heart that it's so, in spite of how little we know. How little we know. How little we know. Here's a song that reminds me of Arlington about 100 years ago. 100 years ago. The next song after that one. Yeah, yeah. Kind of fits with this beautiful room. A moment after dark, around the park, an old-fashioned gent comes parading, dressed in funny clothes and singing as he goes, a lamplighter's serenade. The old boy loves to talk with couples on the walk, but when it's half after love time, he reaches for his sticks, and from his bag of tricks, he lights every star in the sky. And if a lady or a beau magic. And then he steals away to sing another day. A lamplighter serenade. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning of the book. Let's go back to Two Sleepy People, the third song. This is a song that, of all unlikely things, my father used to sing to me and my siblings when it was time to go to bed. It's got a lovely lyric by Frank Lesser, back when he was just writing lyrics before he went on to write both music and lyrics for shows like Guys and Dolls. He was out in California, and he and Hoagie wrote this next song. Sure. I guess we haven't got a sense of responsibility. Our young romance is so intense, it's close to imbecility. Tick-tock, cuckoo, here we are, out of cigarettes, holding hands and yawning. Look how late it gets. Two sleepy people by dawn's early light, and too much in love to say goodnight. Oh, here we are in a cozy chair, picking on a wishbone from the frigid air. Two sleepy people with nothing to say, and too much in love to break away. Do you remember the nights we used to linger in the hall? Your father didn't like me at all. And do you remember the reasons why we married in the fall? To rent this little nest and get a bit of rest. Well, here we are, just about the same. Foggy little fella, drowsy little dame, who two sleepy people with dawn's early light, and too much in love to say goodnight. One more solo, Joe. La la la, la 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 la. The nights we used to cuddle in the car, watching every last fading star. And do you remember the reason why that my health was under par? And you, my little schnooks, were ruining your looks. Well, here we are, keeping up the pace, letting each tomorrow slap us in the face. Two sleepy people by dawn's early light, and too to say good night. Joe Mulholland at this fine Steinway. I'm Will McMillan. I live down in East Arlington. I love seeing faces I recognize from the bus. And now I give you back into the able hands of Susan Karp.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was just lovely. Well, it was really a great opportunity to have both Will and Joe come today. Certainly when we talk about economic safety or the consequences, what happens when an individual or a family experiences financial abuse, it's a pretty deep and dark subject. So I thought it was great to have an opportunity to have you spread some light and love, and I certainly fed you. So what I'd like to do now, the Middlesex DA, Marion Ryan, is en route. She's parking right at the moment. So this is now the time, as well as to fulfill my timeline, to go over a few things. This event and many things that we have been able to do certainly has been provided by Representative Sean Garbally, which I'd like you to stand right now, please. About 18 months ago, Sean requested to put an earmark in, which is a legislative item in the budget, to have money allocated to the Arlington Senior Center. Well, as anyone knows in government, when things are put in and budgets come and go and budgets get cut, then they're reinstated, it really wasn't on my radar. And it's a little bit of a funny story because Sean had called me to let me know that he had done this and that it was further supported by Senator Cindy Friedman's office. So we thank her as well. But it came to me, the notification of this particular grant, or earmark of $150,000, came to me on a snowy February. I actually thought I was being scammed. Because I kid you not, I was going through my email. It came from a name that I was less familiar with, and it referenced a SIG grant. So in my world in Council on Aging, a SIG grant stands for Service Incentive Grant. And I thought, darn, I don't really remember when I applied for this, but that's great. And then when I opened up the email and it said $150,000, I'm like, nah, couldn't be. So I actually sat on that information for 3 days. I didn't delete the email, but I personally was convinced that I had a scam in my work email. I finally got up enough nerve and I reached out to my colleagues in the Executive Office of Elder Affairs and I said, Emmett, so Emmett's the program manager. I said, Emmett, I got this email. He goes, yes, you did. And I said, what do you mean, yes, I did? He goes, yes, you were awarded. And I said, but look at the amount. I said, is it correct? And he goes, yes. So with the $150,000, we've been able to do an incredible amount of programs. I have Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Kelly here, who we've been working very closely with. We've been able to provide over 200 individuals have been served in Arlington. These are seniors, to have free smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors installed. We also piggybacked that and did some home inspection. So we've been able to do that, Sean. We certainly have been able to do an event. Thank you. We've been able to do this particular event, which brings so many of you together to talk about a very deep subject. So Sean, thank you once again. Today I wanted, before I turn the mic over to Sean, who will then introduce DA Ryan, I wanted to take just a few minutes, and I really want you to look around because so much of our work is done behind the scenes. I mean, certainly today it's very visible because you see a large room, you see lunch, entertainment, and someone holding a microphone. But I'd like you to really listen to the people that I'm announcing, but look at them and understand that everybody here that's not 60 and over, that's within my constituency, is here to support you and the efforts that the Council on Aging does. So certainly we're going to start with Arlington Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine. So Adam, I'd like you to stand, please. Health and Human Services Director, Christine Bongiorno. Captain Richard Flynn from the Arlington Police Department, and members of the police department that we interface with on a regular basis. If you could stand in the back. And so what we need to do is Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Kelly. I would like you to stand. Kelly McGee Wright, who is from Minuteman Senior Services. She's the Executive Director. Next to her is Renee Prestia, who is in charge of the Protective Services. And I believe we have Robin Acella here from the Arlington Housing Authority. Robin, raise your hand in back. And what I'd like to do now, so a part of financial abuse includes our banking committee, or community. So at this time, I would like members of the banking community that were able to attend today to please rise. I would like to thank you all, and at this particular time, I would like to invite Sean Garbely up. I see that Middlesex District Attorney Marion Ryan has arrived. She's underneath the exit sign, even though she's entering. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be with you this afternoon. I hear the turkey was the best, and that's why it went pretty quickly, so I'm sorry I missed out on that. Susan, thanks so much for the warm introduction, and thank you for having this great event and really bringing Arlington together. From our senior citizen activists and advocates and so many throughout the town of Arlington to really come together to figure out what we can do more to support you aging in place, to support transportation, to support home care services, to do whatever government should be doing in terms of a safety net to make sure that you are living the lives you should be living. And I see a number of people who I was able to visit with last week. We took a ride to the Carroll Center for the Blind in Newton. I see many of my friends from that time here in the audience, a couple right here in the front row. So it's amazing to be with you here today, and I have the distinct honor of being able to introduce, I'm going to move over here. Will it come? I think Marion wants to talk on the floor, so you want to hold this and I'll come down. Terrific.
Oh, sorry. It's dangerous. I've got the microphone again.
Those stairs can be a big hazard, so nobody should use those stairs. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing someone who's been a close friend of mine and a close partner for 5 years now in your role as our district attorney on a whole host of issues, whether it be criminal justice reform, domestic violence, the opiate epidemic that is ravishing Middlesex County, the town of Arlington, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but specifically around elder abuse. I've been able to work closely with her office and her specifically. And I remember about 3 years ago, I got a call from a constituent who was living in Arlington, and she received a phone call where it was somebody on the other line saying they were some sort of a charitable organization and kind of telling her, you need to get your checkbook out and write a check and send it to this address to help your grandkids or, whatever it may be. And she had grandkids and she got nervous and she was 85 years old and she wrote a check and actually sent to the address $2,500, a significant amount of money, especially to her. And she sent it, and she was a victim of fraud. And so I picked up the phone, and I called my friend our district attorney, Marion Ryan, and I told her what had happened, and she's right away got on the case, contacted her office. Her office reached out to this individual, and they were able to recoup that money and go through that prosecutorial process against those who frauded her. So that's the kind of work our district attorney and her office does every single day on behalf of you and behalf of seniors across Middlesex County. So please give a warm introduction for our outstanding district attorney, Marion Ryan.
Good to see you. It's good to see you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. I always like coming to this event for two reasons. First of all, it's a chance for me to give you what I hope will be a lot of useful information. And secondly, what I always ask is the people who are here today will get the information, and hopefully they can protect themselves with that. But I'm sure that every one of you knows 5 other people who, for one reason or another, couldn't be here today, and they would benefit from the information. So my hope is always that you'll take this information and spread it as widely as you can. And we've got lots of information for you. Take as many copies of the information as you want. Give it to whoever you want. We are safer and you are better protected when lots of people have that information. And I want to start just by saying, and I would say this even if they were not here, you know, lots of times we think about what do our folks that are supposed to be protecting us do? And in Arlington, I can tell you the answer to that question is they do an amazing amount. Beginning with our legislative partners, you saw Representative Garbely. He is somebody who we work together a lot. He's here today, as are the police department. Christine Buongiorno's here, Susan, who put this together, members of the banking community. You know what? Fortunately, nothing bad has happened, but they've all made time in their day to be here to do what is the best defense to crime, and that is to educate yourself. It's so much better if you meet me here rather than when you're the person who's lost the money. In Arlington, your town manager, folks here have done so much with prevention. I'll be here in a few weeks doing some things with kids. They're here, whether it's seniors, whether it's kids, wanting to make sure that you don't have to be interacting on the other side. And to give you a sense, you know, the scam that Representative Garbely just talked about has not gone away, because you might have seen in the news today, whether in the newspaper or online, however you get your news, over the weekend we had a situation right over in Cambridge, a person, actually a younger person, who was contacted, and this is a scam that's going around everywhere. He got contacted by the IRS to say that he had made some kind of error in paying his taxes. And he owed $9,000. There was a warrant out for his arrest, and he needed to pay the $9,000. So he went on his phone, and he really quickly paid that $9,000. When you pay like that, money's gone. A little while later, they called him back and said, in order for him to be certain that the warrant had been recalled so that it wouldn't pop up if he got stopped for a traffic violation or something, he needed to go to the IRS office in Canton. Now, there is no IRS office in Canton, but he didn't know that. So he got an Uber, and he went over to Canton. As he was arriving in Canton, he got another phone call from the IRS that said, bad news on 2 fronts. One, we found another warrant for you from 2015 or something. You owe us another $9,000. And number 2, we can't meet with you this afternoon. You're going to have to come back on another day. He sent them another $9,000. He went home, took his Uber back home. So now there's $18,000, almost $19,000 gone. When he got home, he got the 3rd phone call saying, you owe us more money for penalties or fees or something. And at that point, he really knew that it was a scheme, and he called the police. And we're going forward on that investigation, but the likelihood that we are actually going to locate that person that was at the other end of the phone, or that money which has left his bank account because he paid online, so it's gone, is very, very slim. So there are a few rules of what I'm going to say today. The first rule is, if you've ever tried to contact the IRS, they do not have telephones. All right, you can only reach them with letters. So if someone calls you up and says they are the IRS, I 100% promise you that that is a scam. I promise. Just hang up the phone. The IRS will not be calling you. The second is, whenever somebody demands that you pay money in a hurry, there's a big rush, you've got to pay it right now, you have to pay it by 5 o'clock, that is a scam. There's nothing that needs your money with such emergency. And the other piece of it is they often tie that emergency to something that's going to affect you. So I'll tell you the other scam, and I want you to be, this is a scam I want you to spread to everybody because everyone's going to get these calls. You may have noticed that we no longer have our Social Security number on our driver's license. Now you have a scrambled number on your driver's license. And that was to prevent somebody finding your driver's license and having your Social Security number. Now, one of the places that you continue to have your Social Security number is on your Medicare card, all right? And first of all, you don't always need to be carrying your Medicare card around, but people do. So when their purse gets stolen or they lose their wallet or something, there's now the Medicare card with your Social Security number on it, right? That's been a problem for a long time. And we have partnered with some of our federal partners like Representative Clark to get Congress to change that system, because nowhere else do you carry around your Social Security number. So legislation finally passed that said your Medicare card is now going to have a scrambled number on it. It will no longer have your Social Security number. Obviously, there are thousands and millions of people who have Medicare cards who we need to replace them. The way they are going to be replaced is they're going to roll out on birthdays, different birth months, and it's going to take 5 years for the whole country to get the new cards. So that's a good thing. It's kind of a bad thing that it's going to take so long, but there are millions of people, and we have to verify people before they send out, make sure we're sending them to the right people and no one goes without their Medicare card. What has happened is people have started, because remember, the bad guys are just like us. They want to do their job and do it really well. Their job is to separate you from your money. That's their job. They want to do that well. That is judged by the more money or property they get from you, the more successful they are. And they want to do it in a way that does not bring them to the attention of the police. That's their goal. So what they have started doing is calling people and saying, this is Medicare. We want to send your new card. So all right, there are new cards that are going to come. Give us your information so we can verify that. Now, if the federal government doesn't know who you are or have your Social Security number, they gave it to you. So you don't have to give it to them. But people are doing it. People are getting that phone call and they're giving out their Social Security number. So the irony is we're trying to take your Social Security number off your Medicare card. They are using that as a scheme to get you to give up the information. So I promise you that you do not have to give information to get that new Medicare card. So if someone asks you for that, that is 150% a scheme. You should hang up. If you are really concerned, maybe it is, maybe she's wrong, maybe I do have to give that information, and what will happen when I go to the doctor? Then call your Social Security office, and they will tell you you do not need to give out that information. Even if you get a call that shows up on your caller ID as Social Security Administration or Medicare in Washington, because what they're doing is they're spoofing that call. They are electronically creating a number to show up on your caller ID. They might be sitting in Somerville, but they're making it look like they're calling from Washington. So that is a scam that is spreading everywhere. Please be just as good at it as they are and spread the word to people that we do not need to be giving out that information. The other scam that continues to grow in popularity, and it really illustrates what is true about a lot of these scams and how to best protect yourself. So you may have heard of the grandparent scam. And there's two forms of the grandparent scam. The first one is you get a phone call and someone says that your grandchild, Joseph, who is 6 years old and who will be playing soccer this afternoon at some field, will be harmed if you don't put together some money in cash, it's always cash, and put it somewhere nearby, near a mailbox, near a trash can, near something, right? Now, here's the first part. When I say that, as I looked across this room, lots of people just shake their head or raise their eyebrows because you're thinking, I wouldn't do that. That sounds silly. Right? The first part of why these scams work is because they happen when you are not sitting in a room with 50 people and when the police department is not sitting in the front of the room and you don't have anyone to turn to and say, they just asked me to bring $5,000 so my granddaughter will be safe this afternoon. Because if you said that out loud, if you said it to someone else, they would say, well, that seems ridiculous. We need to call the police. We need to do something else. Instead, you're in your house, often by yourself, and they say, we're warning you, we're watching your telephone, do not call the police. Do not call your son or daughter who's the parent of your grandchild. And you get afraid. So they take advantage of the fact that you're afraid. Now remember what I just said to you about you never need to do things in a rush. If you took that call that you got about your granddaughter and you slowed yourself down a little bit and tried not to be afraid, and called somebody you trust, whether it's the police department or somebody at Elder Services or somebody you trust, and you heard yourself say that out loud, you would realize that that can't be true, and you wouldn't do it. And the second piece is, the second variation of the grandparent scheme, which I think is so much worse because it's a little bit more believable, is you get a phone call, and the person says, hello, my name is Marion Ryan. I'm a lawyer out in Colorado. Your grandson, Michael, who's at the University of Colorado, got stopped last night, and we found some drugs in his car. He needs bail money. He said, please don't call Mom and Dad. I'm so embarrassed. Please call Nana or Grandpa to get the money. Now, I was at an event just recently, just like this, and as I was telling that example, there was a woman sitting at the table right to my right, and I could tell she was getting more and more upset as we talked about it. And at some point, she stood up and she said, I am really embarrassed to say this, but my husband and I own a business. We certainly know how to make financial decisions. And 2 weeks ago, we sent $140,000 to that scheme. Over 3 days. So that's the other piece. Sometimes people send the first amount of money or they send some money and they're just embarrassed. And they're afraid to tell their kids because they don't want their kids to say, you shouldn't be living alone anymore, or why would you do something foolish like that? They're afraid to call the police because they're afraid the police will think that they're silly or foolish to have done that money. Anybody can get taken advantage of in these scams. So if something happens, or if you realize, for instance, that maybe you didn't quite hear what I said about the Medicare card and you give out your Social Security number, the second you realize that, call the police. Call Elder Services. Don't just hope that nothing is going to happen, because something will happen. And don't let, I'm embarrassed that I did that, stop you from doing that. But let's go back to the grandchild scam for a minute. I'm going to challenge you to do something. I don't want to, and Captain Flynn knows I don't want any of you to actually become bad guys, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to become a bad guy, all right? So we've had hundreds of those phone calls where the call is, your grandson's been picked up, send some bail money. You send the bail money, and a few hours later you get another phone call. It's Marion Ryan, the lawyer again. And now I want to tell you that your grandson is going to be bailed out, but we need to get some experts, witnesses for his trial. So please send some more money. And also the judge has ordered him to live close to the courthouse, so I, the lawyer, am going to put him in a hotel. Could just send some money for that. All right? And before you know it, there's a lot of money that's gone. And they make it seem believable. Because the story you might hear is, your grandson was stopped for speeding. He had some other kids in the car with him, and when they searched the car, under one of the seats, they found some drugs. So maybe you know your grandson is a good kid, he wouldn't be doing that, but he had these friends that might have had drugs with him. And sometimes people insist on wanting to know what the police say, so somebody gets on the phone and says, "This is Captain Flynn." You don't know who it is, but he tells you about what happened. Sometimes people insist on talking to their grandson. And the grandson gets on the phone and he's crying and he's all choked up so you can't really tell that it's him. And he starts saying, "It wasn't me, I just was giving someone a ride, somebody else got in the car." Now you think you've checked out the story. But here's the really interesting piece. We've had thousands of people tell us they've gotten those calls. A lot of people have sent the money. Some people have known that it might be a scam. They didn't send the money, but they call the police or they call the Council on Aging or someplace anyway, which we really want you to do. Even if you don't give people money, call, because we put that in the local paper, it goes in the newsletter. We let other people know that it's happening around Arlington. Be on alert. If you get that call, it's not true. But here's the interesting piece. All those thousands of people who've reported this to us, okay? I would guess that every single person in this room knows someone who, if their grandchild's life really did depend on it, could not come up with $100 in cash this afternoon. They just couldn't. They just don't have the money. They just could not have $100 in cash. Not a credit card or a debit card, but cash. Interestingly, those people never get the phone call. So if they were random, there would be some people who'd be worried about their grandchild, but they didn't have the money. In all the years we've been doing this, we have never had one of those people come forward. So for years, when I was working on these cases, I used to try to track how did people know who to call? What's the connection? Because they were obviously not just calling random numbers. This is just my own personal view, but I think if you do what I suggest to you, you'll figure out how it works. Think about if you work in a medical facility. You work at the hospital, you work at the blood lab, you work at the pacemaker clinic, you work somewhere, all right? And people come in all the time, your patients. Now, what do you know about them? You know their name, obviously. You know where they live. So maybe I live in Arlington, and I know that if you live up in Morningside, that's a really nice section. So probably you have some resources. And if you live in sort of a 10-apartment building somewhere, maybe you don't have quite so many resources. So I can sort that out. I also know what you did for a job, because that's on your medical records. So I know whether you were a doctor, whether you drove a taxi cab, whether you were a professor, so I can get some idea of how much money you might have had. Importantly, I also know what kind of insurance you have. Do you just have Medicare, or do you have that very expensive supplemental insurance? Because that gives me an idea of how much money you have. If I'm not sure about your house, I'm not from Arlington, so I don't know, I go on Google Earth. And if you haven't Google Earthed your own house, you really should, because it's amazing. Google Earth is so good now, not only do you completely see your own house, but you can see what's in the driveway. So I go look at your house on Google Earth. It's a beautiful house, perfectly maintained. And there are 2 really nice SUVs in the driveway. I can probably figure out that you have a little bit of money. All right, so that's how I figure out who a good target is. Now, how do I figure out, and this is the key piece, if I called you up and said I was a lawyer for your grandson, Michael, and you didn't have a grandson, Michael, you wouldn't stay on the phone, right? You wouldn't keep talking if your grandson wasn't Michael and he didn't go to school in Colorado. So how do I know that? One way, and this just goes to my general motto, which is nothing good happens on Facebook, all right, is that there are 800 things on Facebook about Nana, here I am going to Colorado University with the sweatshirt, all right? I'm not very computer literate, but a 7th grader can figure out from that who Nana is. So there's that kind of information that's out there, all right? The other piece is, the next time, and this is the challenge, the next time you're at a hospital or you're at the doctor's office, pretend you're a bad guy and just spend a little time listening to what you hear. Because what you hear are things like this. I went in and saw the doctor. I come out now to the nice lady at the desk. The doctor told me to make another appointment. So I say, doctor wants to see me in 3 weeks. And she says, well, how about July 15th? And I say, oh, no, I can't do that. You know, my grandson, Michael, is coming home from Colorado, and we're all heading to the Cape. Or I can't do that because my granddaughter, Elizabeth, is going off to college in New York City, and we're all driving down. All right? I always say I was a terrible failure at this because my 87-year-old father had 12 grandchildren that he was incredibly proud of. If you sat beside him at the blood lab for 15 minutes, you would know the first name of every one of his grandchildren. You would know what sport they played. You would know where they went to school. And oh, by the way, he would have said it all in his Irish whisper, so if those of you in the back couldn't hear, he would have made sure you could hear that. So the next time you are in that situation, pretend that you were gathering information and just listen to what you hear. You hear all kinds of information. Because that's what we do, right? You have to kill time, you're waiting, people chat. I was sitting in a place yesterday, by the time I left, the woman beside me had told me the whole story of her daughter Delia's wedding. Where they're having the wedding, where they're having the honeymoon. They're going to be gone for 3 days because they're hosting the party before the wedding. If I wanted to break into her house, I'd be all set because I know when she's not going to be there. So we talk a lot, and folks, our friends from the banking community talk to you a lot about protecting your information, like your passwords and your account numbers and all of that. But when we talk about personal information, it includes all of those other things, because that is how people take that information, and then when they call you up, they feed back some of that information with the correct name of your grandchildren, the correct place they live. That's what keeps you on the phone, talking to them. And before you know it, you're at the part where they're saying, please send money. And the money is going off because you think, well, these people really do know my grandchildren. So that's an important part about protecting yourself from scams in general. It is, number one, slow things down. Number two, never send cash. Anything that involves cash in an envelope is going to end badly for you. Number three, say whatever it is you're thinking about doing out loud to somebody you trust before you do it. Before you send off something, before you commit to doing anything that anybody asks you on the phone, say it out loud to one of your kids, to the police, to one of the social workers, and you'll start to hear how crazy that sounds. The second piece I want to talk about just for a couple of minutes is, you know, the scams in a way are easy because we all think those are strangers who come and they try to take our money away. By far, much more money is lost to the people who are your relatives or your friends. And the two primary ways that happens is, number one, a joint bank account. You have a joint bank account with yourself and your niece. Your niece has never put any money in that bank account. It is all your money. When you sold your house, from insurance, anything that you have, you put in that bank account. You are worried that if you got sick or something happened to you, you want your niece to be able to get to that money. So you put her on that account, and you trust her. Well, life changes. Maybe she loses her job, maybe she gets divorced, maybe she has a child who has a substance issue, and she needs money. And she starts helping herself to the money in that bank account. Even if you discover that, and you come to us or you come to the police department, we cannot prosecute her. And we can't get the money back. Because legally, you both own that money. You can't be prosecuted for stealing what's yours. There's no requirement that she use that money to take care of you. It's not half and half. The money's half hers and half yours. The money, the whole account, belongs to both of you. So that kind of account is a very dangerous thing. And if you really want to have one, you should never have more money in there than you could afford to lose. So if you go to Florida during the winter and you want your niece to be able to pay some bills for you, and that's going to be $3,000 or $4,000, open that account, put $5,000 in there, and that's the maximum you're going to lose. It's not going to be every penny that you have. The other way that people take a lot of your money is with a power of attorney. So a power of attorney is more powerful than a gun, because what you do with a power of attorney is you make the other person you. They legally become you. So if you give your son a power of attorney, he is now legally you. Anything that you could do, sell your house, rent your house, remodel your house, mortgage your house, anything you could do, he can do. So we are now seeing a lot of people who bought their house in 1984. They have long paid the mortgage. Now they get a notice from the bank that their mortgage is overdue, and they think, well, that's silly, I don't have a mortgage. Well, your son took out a $100,000 mortgage, and he is entirely free to do that. Because you could do it, he can do it. So if you want to give somebody a power of attorney, suppose you're going in the hospital, you're going to be laid up for 3 months. You want your son to be able to take care of things for 3 months. You should see a professional and have a power of attorney that talks about him being able to do things for 3 months. And suppose if he's going to spend more than $5,000, you want him to check with you or get a note from you that he can do that. That should go into the power of attorney. But people very easily download those power of attorneys off the internet. They get them on the back of their healthcare proxy, and they just suddenly say, oh, I'll put my daughter or my son in here. And sometimes even worse, they feel badly that they gave it to one daughter, so they give the other daughter one too. Right? It's like running around being triplets all the time. Everybody's doing everything, and I promise you, everybody will be taking money. All right? It's like sometimes like Family Feud. So that is a very, very powerful weapon against you and your resources, and you should exercise it very, very carefully. So I know that's a lot of information at once, and I want to give people time for some questions. So I'm happy to take people's questions if you have them. Yeah. And what they often will say is, they say, Grandma, and you say, who is this? Your favorite grandchild. You're not going to say which one would that be, all right? So, and what we also found was a lot of times, and be careful of this, a lot of times before someone got scammed, they would have gotten a phone call that goes something like this. Hello? Oh, hi, Mrs. Smith. This is Marion. I know you don't remember me. I grew up in the neighborhood. I used to play with your kids. You don't remember it all, but you don't want to be rude, and there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood. So you say, oh, yes, of course, dear. How are you? Yes, I was looking to get in touch with the boys. Oh, did you mean Tommy or Johnny? All right, so now you've given that up. Oh, Johnny. Oh, dear, Johnny doesn't live here anymore. He's married now. He and his wife live over in Lexington. Oh, that's nice. Yes, they have 2 little boys. All right, so now there's a whole handful of information that you've given out. And when we circle back and check with Tommy, he never got a phone call that somebody was looking to get in touch with him. Even though you gave the number, they weren't looking for Tommy at all. So that's just a fake. Anybody else? Questions? No? Yeah.
So are any of these scammers ever caught, or it's almost impossible to get them?
Well, see, you must be a plant, because in all of Middlesex County, 54 cities in town, 1.6 million people, the only kind of phone scammer that we have ever successfully caught was with the help of the Arlington Police Department, and they deserve a huge round of applause. So we had a woman who lived right on Mass Ave, very sophisticated businesswoman, had run a business for a long time. She fell victim to one of the lottery scams. All right, I'm just going to say, if you didn't play the lottery in Jamaica, you didn't win. Just take it from me. You did not win. I promise. But anyway, she fell victim to one of those lottery scams, which, you know, is you won $2 million, you have to pay taxes of $5,000 and $3,000 and whatever. She lost a very substantial amount of money, well over $100,000. So what she was told to do would be get whatever today's amount of money was, $3,000, $4,000, whatever, in cash, and wire the money. Now, she didn't know how to wire money, but the helpful voice on the phone told her that there was a place right up in Burlington or Bedford or someplace where you could wire money. And she went off and she did that a number of times. Ultimately, and she was mortified when she realized she had lost that money. And she really only called the police when she got so embarrassed she stopped answering their phone calls. And this person who was making the phone calls was resourceful enough. He tracked down somebody in the building she lived in and had the person come to her door and say, your nephew Patrick is looking for you, here's a number. She didn't have a nephew Patrick. It was the scammer who had called her neighbor and said, please go over and tell her to call this number. And then she got really afraid that he was contacting the neighbors. So she went to the Arlington Police Department, and she was so sophisticated in her financial dealings, she really had tracked every number she ever talked to. She had kept every bit of information. She had the routing number of what money she had wired, all of that. We were able to investigate and put together, and we found the person who was calling her out in a double-wide trailer in Nebraska, Arkansas, someplace out in the middle of the country. And when the state police and the Arlington police went out there to get him, they arrested him for swindling her out of all that money and brought him back to stand trial. He had never been in Massachusetts before. All right? She was just a random person that they had put together by using Google Earth. We found her house on his computer on Google Earth. We found on his computer that he had Googled what was the closest money wiring place from her house. So when she said, I don't know how to do it, he said, oh, just go up Route 3, go up 3A, get to this place. We found the packaging in his house from the money that she had wired, the envelopes that it came wrapped up in. He still had that in his house. He was, of course, not the end of the line in those lotteries. His role was he would call, he would give people all the information. You would wire your money off to someplace, a Walmart or something out in the middle of the country. He would go pick up the money. He was allowed to keep 10% off the top for his salary, and then the rest of the money went out of the country. So we didn't find all of her money because that went out of the country to whoever was running that scam. We did prosecute him. He went to jail. Of course, he had no money. You know, he was living in a double-wide trailer with no job except calling people up. So there's an order of some restitution against him. I don't expect she will ever get that money because he'll never have that money unless he scams somebody else to get it. But he spent a considerable period of time, but that's the only time we have ever, it really was because she was so meticulous about it, we were able to track him down. Because usually it's a fake, you know, it's a burner phone that they call you from, a phone they throw away, so we can't find the phone. A lot of times the money is going out of the country to countries that are not friendly to the United States. So even if we, for instance, had a warrant for us, they're not sending the person back to stand trial here. That's why it's so important that we prevent it from happening, because it's very unlikely we will get the money back. Yeah. Yeah.
Where somehow they got in, handed it damage, and then said, we can fix it, call this number, which I did.
Yeah.
And then, well, to pay by check, you give them your checking account, routing number, and I had to change all of that. I changed my checking account, my credit card, whatever.
That computer scam is incredibly popular, if you will, in spreading around. And people, if it makes you feel better, I was talking at the legislature about this recently, and somebody there had just that morning paid the $50, the $49.99 or something to let the computer be fixed, which is even worse because then you're letting them into, if you do your banking online, all of that, you never want to let anybody, any stranger into your computer. Think of it like punching a hole into your house. Once you let them in, they can access everything that's in there. If you suspect, even if you've been talking to somebody and then you suspect there's something wrong with your computer, you know, get off the phone with them and take your computer off to somebody else to get it fixed. Because they sort of trick you. They give you the whole spiel about you're going to lose all your pictures, your documents, you get nervous about that. But we could fix it for you, and you think, oh, thank goodness. And you agree to do it. And it's only going to cost you $49 and give me your credit card so I can charge you. So now they're in your computer and they have your credit card number. So it's a very dangerous scam. Yeah?
When we receive a call and we realize somebody's trying to scam us, is there something we could do at that point to help the police track them down?
Yeah, I mean, you can take the number. I'll tell you the reality of numbers. When we call them back, they go nowhere. But the important piece really is to let the Council on Aging, let the police department, let somebody know, because the newspapers are really good about putting things in there. You know, lots of times it's just letting people know they're not alone. So you get a call from the IRS, for instance, and then you think, oh, I just read that in the paper. That's a scam. We really try to spread that information around. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Now, we promised you ice cream, so the ice cream is in the back, and I wanted to save that to the end. But before I do that, first of all, thank you very much, District Attorney Marion Ryan. We have appreciated the time that you allocated to come to us. What I also wanted to do was to honor you. I can't lift this and talk at the same time. Hang on. Well, here. Chris Angel, can I have your... We've been working on elder abuse issues actively in the COA since 2014 when we formed the Arlington Elder Abuse Task Force. We have created what we call the tree, where we add names for individuals that have certainly been upholding the economic and personal safety of our seniors. In the past, we've honored the police department, we've honored Betsy Crimmins, who is the lead attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services. Today, your name isn't on there yet because we haven't done it yet, but we are adding District Attorney Marion Ryan on this plaque, because even though she represents Middlesex County, she represents Arlington as well. She does a lot of work in here. She does a lot of work everywhere, and so her name will be on this list. I'd also, just because I know I'm standing in the way of the ice cream, I would also like to ask Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Kelly to stand up here, please. This year, actually, you know, we do a lot of work in the Council on Aging with a lot of municipal departments. Thank you. And we do work with DPW, we work with the fire department, we work with the police department, we work with municipal departments that you wouldn't even imagine in order to carry out our mission in the Council on Aging. The reason I'm recognizing the fire department, because the police department is always doing things too, and not to exclude you at all, but we had a unique opportunity with the earmark that came through to us. And for many, and possibly some in this room, we were able to install fire detectors and smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. And we have reached over 200 individuals since February to do this. This was a free program. The fire department was also assisted us in doing home safety checks. The reason the fire department is so good, because they're so good like the police department and other municipal departments, is that they were in your homes. So DA Ryan was here today to talk about financial abuse. We work with verbal, physical, self-neglect issues as well. So with the help of the fire department, we've been able to connect the seniors with their permission to allow us in their homes that we've never had any contact with. And so, Kevin, you're here today representing the fire department. Chief Bobby Jefferson is not able to be here today. And so it is really for the Arlington Fire Department. So between Middlesex DA Marion Ryan, as well as Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Kelly, and representing the Arlington Fire Department, those names will be on our tree. So a big hand of... And since I have the mic, when I caught the DA entering, I did not mean to omit representation here from Senator Clark's office. If you'd stand up, Jay Higgins is from Senator Clark's office. Both Senator Friedman and Senator Clark obviously are not here because Senate is in session. They're doing good work, and so I want to say thank you once again. Take the time to mingle. The ice cream is there. It's gonna melt. So enjoy, and thank you so much, and please give us a call if we can help.